good evening. I was asked to come and give a presentation this evening on esoterica, which is the symbolism of the blue degrees of Freemasonry. So to get into it real quick, my name is James Nero, 32nd degree Mason from the Valley of Tacoma. I'm the Venerable Master of the Lodge of Perfection there. The program tonight is part of the learning series from the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which is called the Master Craftsman program. The Scottish Rite is an independent body of Freemasonry, which is open to all Master Masons and is considered by some to be the University of Masonry. With this, we prefer to take a deeper dive into some of the symbolism and into the degrees and try to draw out truths about being men, being our relationship to each other, and our relationship to God. The Scottish Rite continues on the foundation of Blue Masonry and offers the 4th degree through the 32nd degree as teaching and expanding upon those lessons taught. What I like to consider Scottish Rite Masonry is similar to a prism. You take the 3 degrees, which you can learn most of the stuff, and then you kind of just take that light and expand it through a prism and then get individual slices. So each one of the degrees, 4 through 32nd, offers a specific lesson to be taught and improve upon itself, and then at the end, it's seen together as a whole pattern, and so that you can you'll really understand the lessons of Masonry and some of the items that are presented mainly by symbol or haven't been told to you or explained, are just kind of there for your own viewing. So Esoterica was written and compiled by Brother Albert Pike, 33rd degree. He was the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite, the Southern Jurisdiction, from 1859 to 1891. It was basically compiled from 2 main lectures that he had given. Both were published by the Supreme Council in 1875 and were given in 1873 and late 1874 respectively, called a lecture on Masonic symbolism and a second lecture on Masonic symbolism. Those were published underneath their own titles and were part of a presentation given to the Royal Order of Scotland. The final compilation was published by Albert Pike in 1888, included most of the information found in both of the lectures, plus in some other information as he had continued throughout his life to really try to get as much information about Masonry as he could. It was published as Esoterica, but the actual name of the book is The Symbolism of the Blue Degrees. The original manuscript, but there was only 2 published, and one was property of the Supreme Council. The other one was originally published by the Royal Order of Scotland. When Albert Pike originally wrote this, he really didn't want it to be published and disseminated easily amongst people. He wanted Masons to really want to learn this. He was quoted as saying, you know, Masons will spend a lot of time listening and wanting to understand things, but they don't want to go and read for themselves. So his idea was that, hey, look, if you want to know this information, you need to be able to search it out for yourselves. But towards the end, and as he was getting older in 1888, one of the reasons he decided to publish it was because he didn't want all of this, his lifetime work of finding out all of these items from Masonry, digging through all of the dirt and then finding these diamonds. He didn't want them to be lost to the world. He wanted his legacy to continue on. So the book that we're going to be talking about tonight actually is transcribed and annotated from the original by Brother Arturo de Hoyos, 33rd degree Grand Cross. He's the Grand Archivist and the Grand Historian of the Supreme Council. One of the things that he did was he really added a lot of information. If you were to get the book is only about 500 pages, and Esoterica is really kind of a small portion of that. It's less than half of it. The remaining half of the information is not only information on the leading up to the writing of Esoterica, but it also talks about the early development of Freemasonry so that you can kind of walk Freemasonry through and you can see how these symbols and what were Albert Pike's thoughts behind why he chose certain meanings for these symbols and what was important to him in this. So he's actually, Albert de Hoyos has got a whole, there's 2 great sections in the back of this, which are basically just individual notes that he has throughout the whole book, and they're annotated similar to footnotes, except for, because some of these notes are paragraphs, he's got them all listed, he's got them indicated as notes and then in the back. So as I went through and read it, I kind of just read one section at a time, went and read the notes that were associated to it, and kind of moved forward. One of the other people that I didn't want to leave off was Brother Edwin Baldridge MacRoddy, 33rd degree. He was the Grand Calligrapher of the Supreme Council. So when you go, if you were to purchase this book and you were to go through and see the plates that are there, most of them were hand drawn by Brother MacRoddy. So I just wanted to, as you see some of the things that I've put up here, he's actually taken the time to write these down. I wanted to make sure that he was mentioned. So as Most Worshipful Jim let you know earlier, this is part of the Master and Craftsman series. This is specific to the Symbolic Lodge. It is a correspondence course, so there are 7 multiple choice short answer quizzes. If you would like to purchase either the book or the program, you can go to the ScottishRiteStore.org under Masonic Education, Master Craftsman, and the Symbolic Lodge. There's 3 different ones if you're a Scottish Rite Mason. There's one for the Scottish Rite Ritual, there's one for the Scottish Rite Philosophy, and this is for the Symbolic Lodge. Just to let you know, it's in green there. It's actually in bright neon green on the website. But it comes in, all your quizzes come in this little folder here, this green folder that you see on your screen. It's $60 for the book and the course, $40 for the course only, and $52.95 for the book only. So I'd recommend that you just take the book and the course at the same time. I found that the quizzes really help you focus your understanding and try to get more out of the, maybe something that you kind of just passed over. A question in the quizzes will kind of make you go back and then reread it and try to think of it as a different way than what you thought of it when you originally had read it. And then every quiz also has a wonderful open essay. What is the thing that you learned the most during this chapter? So there's you know, a lot of open-ended questions in there, and every one of them is read by a member of the Supreme Council when you send it back. I went through the quizzes that I received when I went through the program, and most of mine were signed by either William Sizemore or and he's the executive director of the Scottish Rite. And then also I had the, let's see here. Oh, on this one, it was just really, I had like 4 from him and then some other just Supreme Council staff. So everyone goes through and they read every one of your questions, and they do provide some comments on it, mostly just encouraging comments and things like that. So the quizzes, the Master Craftsman quizzes come 7. The first quiz is the early Freemasonry. Quizzes 2 and 3 are the early Masonic rituals. And then quizzes 4 through 7 focus on esoterica. Again, esoterica being such a small portion of the overall book written by Arturo de Hoyos, it has a lot of other information in there. So if you are not a Scottish Rite Mason and have not taken the Master Craftsman Scottish Rite Ritual and Monitor Guide, you will need to download from the Scottish Rite store website I think it's a 90, or I think it's almost 90 pages of the Scottish Rite Ritual Monitor and Guide. This mainly provides early history and then also some of the early Masonic rituals. If you are a member and already have this book, this is basically your big black book that you get with it, the first about 35 pages or so. So since we were basically here to talk about esoterica, I kind of just wanted to put down, and we're going to skip over the early Freemasonry and early Masonic rituals. I will say that these provided a great amount of information, and if you've ever read early Masonic history, you really kind of don't know where there's not a consensus history. And so like you pick up little nuggets at every time you read a different thing about history. Even the Scottish Rite Ritual Monitor and Guide has a history, and then there's another history that is that is inside of Esoterica. That is, they just have little different items in there that were interesting to me as I went through and read them. So Esoterica breaks out into different sections, and the first section, it comes in the preface, the symbols for the blue degrees of Masonry, a section called Fragment, and then the appendices. The preface actually has 3 speeches that were extracts. It's not the whole speeches, but they're a way to kind of lay out what Albert Pike was thinking when he started compiling the book. The address, all 3 of these were lectures that were given prior to 1888, and that they're there to kind of just lay out the mind frame of Albert Pike, and then really to get you introduced into his writing. If you've never read Albert Pike, especially if you've only read Morals and Dogma, he has a unique writing style that you just kind of got to get used to. It's with everybody. Everybody has their own language. And so what we want to do is just get you into his frame of thinking as you go through this. And the preface also has a very extensive layout from Arturo de Hoyos on how he was trying to write this book. He basically wanted to present Albert Pike's Esoterica complete and whole by itself, but he also wanted to add in some of the information that he was able to find out over the years and supplement it. So what he did is he presented it as, here's Esoterica, here's some of the appendices, and here is the notes that I've taken to it. So what he recommended with going through this is just read a section, go back through, read the notes, and then if you missed anything, kind of go back again through the section and see if you can find out anything that you may have not understood. So the symbols of the blue degrees of Freemason, these are really the lessons of Esoterica by Albert Pike. It includes an introduction. The 5 main lessons are the compasses and the squares. Lesson 2 is the weapons and blows of the assassins. Lesson 3, the 3 grips. Lesson 4, the substitute for the master's word. And lesson 5 is the 47th problem of Euclid. And then other sections that he talks about some of the symbols but doesn't go into near as great depth are the fragments. Some of these fragments are a couple of paragraphs, some of them are a page and a half, but they're really quick little short sections that you can take and add to the symbolism. Excuse me. So they are: the truth is the cable toe a symbol, cornerstones, the ladder of Jacob, Tubal Cain, Shibboleth, and Solomon and Hiram. Maybe these are some of the items, some symbols that you never really thought about as you were going through and going through your degrees and getting through. Why is Solomon? What does Solomon and Hiram represent? Is the cable toe really a symbol? What are their cornerstones? So then after you get through that, there are appendices that were added by Arturo de Hoyo. The first appendice is parallels to the symbolism of the blue degrees. So obviously Albert Pike is his own person, and he interpreted the symbols of Masonry in his own way. There are other Masons that don't agree with him or disagree slightly. And so in 4 of the 5 main sorry about that, my mic dropped off. Some of the parallels were basically here, he's giving other examples of what other Masons think and what are some of the maybe contradicting items that weren't really portrayed by Albert Pike. So the weapons and blows of the assassins, the 3 grips, the substitute for the master's word, and is the cable toe a symbol? There was also a letter touching on Masonic symbolism that Pike had written, Pike's dependence on other sources, and the faith of Albert Pike. These are just ways to to show you the influences that he had when he was writing these degrees. And then one of the sections that I found most interesting was the appendice number 5, which are the 4 valuable exposés. 1723 is a Mason's examination. 1725 is the grand mystery of Freemasons discovered. And masonry dissected from 1730 and Jacob and Boaz, which is probably one of the more famous ones from 1762. Seeing as how Freemasonry, we didn't really have ciphers when it was originally coming around. It was a lot more tongue to ear. We don't have a lot of written what our ritual was prior to any of these exposés coming out. So what you really see as you go through and read these exposés is you really go through and you're like, hey, you can see certain items that are very similar to our current ritual, but there are major differences. And then you can see kind of how even going from 1723 to 1725 to 1730, you can see how they've developed. For instance, the first high degree, which is considered the Master Mason degree, really appeared in 1725 coming out of the grand mystery of Freemasons discovered. Prior to that, there's really no evidence that there was anything other than two degrees, the entered apprentice degree and the fellowcraft degree. And then what was thought to be before that was that the Master Mason degree was an kind of an honorary degree for those that have basically passed through the chair. But they weren't considered Master Masons, they were just considered senior fellowcrafts. In 1725, that kind of changed, and now we have the Master Mason degree and also the legend of the legend of Hiram associated to it. And so in 1730, you can kind of see the more development of that. And by 1762 in Jacob and Boaz, you can really start seeing ritual that looks a lot like ours. And then, like I explained, that there's notes to the symbolism of the blue degrees after the appendices. These have a ton of information, just as that Brother Arturo was able to find out, and kind of just give you some more sources as to where Pike was getting some of his information or some explanatory items that he saw fit. So as we go through, we're going to go through, I wanted to, in doing this, I wanted to give you guys some information, but I didn't want to present to you exactly what was in there. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm just going to tell you what you can find if you were to purchase this program and look it up for yourself. So during the introduction of Esoterica, Albert Pike had this quote here: "Unless the symbol conceals some great cardinal truth or morality, philosophy, or religion, what is its real and substantial value?" Basically saying that if Masons decided to pull these symbols in, they must have had a reason to pull these symbols in. When we go through our degrees, we're told that, you know, Masonry, everything that was chosen by Masons to be put in our ritual was chosen for a reason. And so that's basically what Albert Pike is saying here, is that we chose some of these symbols and that there has to be a reason for it. So as we go through the introduction here, some of the things that are talked about here are the schools of Masonry. And this is really, when going through the history of Masonry, you find that you get to the point where, well, what is true and what is a myth, right? And so that is really the major differences between the authentic and the romantic schools of Masonry. So the authentic would be methods of modern historiography. We use as fact over myth. Hey, in 1717, that's when Masonry started, and before that, it was unorganized. Where the romantic school of Masonry looks at the myths as origins for the Masonic symbols and isn't really concerned if they're really historically accurate. So it's just a matter of we're looking at myth over hard fact. Those are the two main ones. And what you'll find as you're going through these is that most Masons will interweave the two schools, but as they start getting back more and there's less evidence of what actually can be written, they're just trying to find out where some of our symbols came from. Also, Albert Pike introduces the Hermetic philosopher's influence, especially in the early times. So one of the main breaks in Freemasonry that happened in 1717 with the development of the Grand Lodge was that there was other lodges operating at the time, and so this group of 4 lodges came together and said, hey, look, we're it. You know, we're going to create a Grand Lodge, but there was other lodges operating. And if any of you know British history in the 1680s, Oliver Cromwell, either known as the usurper or, oops, sorry. Hello? Sorry. My apologies, my computer is messing up here at work. There we go. When Oliver Cromwell took over England, basically that caused a split between the Protestants and the Catholics. And a lot of the Catholic supporters fled to France, northern France in particular. And this is where the thought behind the split between the York Rite Masonry, which is considered what English Masonry comes from, and the Scottish Rite Masonry split is thought to have happened. And during this time, it wasn't, Christianity was more ruthless, if you will, and they wouldn't consider outside thoughts. And so a group of Hermetic philosophers, including Ashmolean, they would take over a lodge and then just bring in some of their thoughts behind, and then bring in some of their symbols as they go through here. For instance, the three lesser lights are, as we know, we are taught that they represent the moon, the sun, the moon, and the master of the lodge. And one of the items that Albert Pike had thought was that it was rather odd that you were having a sun, a moon, and a master of the lodge. And his thought is that the master of the lodge is Mercury, or Hermes, as it was known by the Greeks. And that is, of course, the first planet. And so you can only see it at certain times during the day in the very early part of the morning. And so there were some thoughts behind that. That was brought into here. And then also the Seal of Solomon. As I've got it up on the screen here, this is considered potentially a Hermetic symbol, just representing that as above, so below, where the two triangles, one pointed up and one pointed down, represent that as above, so below, and it is also a mixture of the male and female together, and they come inside of one symbol. So that's the first introduction section. The next one, he goes into lesson 1, the compasses and the square. Some of the items that you can hear in here is, well, what did the compasses represent? What do the points of the compasses represent? What does the square represent? Why do we progress through the degrees? When we first start off, the square is on top of both points of the compasses. And as we move through, one point of the compasses is elevated above the square until both points of the compasses are elevated to the square. Why is the progression going through that? What is the purpose of the preparation of the candidate? We divest a candidate of all clothes. We put him in rags. We get all metal out of him. What is the purpose of that? Why are we preparing a candidate in this manner? Why are we hoodwinking him? Why is there a cable tow wrapped once around his throat during the first degree? Why is it different in America than it is in Europe? He goes in through some of the small, and they're not real in depth because this isn't what he was going after, but he really just talks about in Europe, instead of for being wrapped once around your throat, it's wrapped around 3 times. Instead of going once around the altar, you go around 3 times. It's a little bit different than what we do here in the United States. And just what are Albert Pike's thoughts behind some of those differences, and why are they associated that? And so one little thing that I noticed here is I put a picture from the Hermetic book published in 1613, which is it is a Hermetic symbol, and you'll notice the square, the triangle, and it has the 4 representing the square with 4 sides, and the 3 with the triangle there. And then it also has the 1 at the front and the 2 at the very bottom here. These are symbols throughout here. If you'll notice, there are 7 celestial bodies, and the man that is sitting above the earth, which is represented below a winged earth, standing above a serpent, which is the dragon there, has rebus on his nameplate across his chest. And we go into the explanation of rebus. Why is he two heads? Why does he have two heads? These are some of the things that are brought inside of this particular lesson, and they're really, as you go through and you try to learn these and try to collect them all together, they really do paint a nice picture, and this comes together very well. The next lesson is the weapons and blows of the assassin. What do each weapon and assassin represent? Who was Hiram a symbol of? There's many different versions of Hiram. So Pike's Hiram, he thought of him as a man, versus early interpretations of Hiram were really of that of Jesus, and that each of the weapons and assassins are different in each one of those versions. And not only do they, the points at which they left. So when he made to escape down through the south, why was it in the south? Why was it in the west and then in the east? Those are the kind of things that are explained inside of lesson 2. So the third lesson is the 3 grips, and really what I noticed really about this particular chapter was Pike talking about the undervalued. The Masonry's symbolism is really undervalued, and that when we go through a degree, we don't really tell you anything. We don't give an explanation, or we give a very superficial, high-level explanation. When you're told, you know, any part of the things, you're not really given anything. You kind of just accept it. It's like, okay, yeah, thank you. And so even though some of the things maybe don't make sense. And so he goes in, so what I liked about this is he went into a lot of the contradictions inside of our ritual, and then also said, hey, look, you know, we kind of just take these for granted and we just move on. And how many Masons really sit down and try to explore the degrees more? And so when he was trying to do this stuff, he's trying to encourage Masons who are reading to actually you know, delve deeper. Don't just take that the items that we give you for granted. Go a little deeper inside this. Also, you know, he wanted to know what did the grips represent? The grip of an apprentice Mason, the grip of a fellow craft Mason. Why is it that Hiram was only raised by the strong grip of a master Mason, and the other 2 grips failed? Those are the kind of things that are brought up inside this lesson. This was a very good one. Lesson 4, the substitute for the master's word. This is one that has a lot of controversy, I guess, as I was going through and really reading it. Albert Pike has kind of a different view than most other Masonic writers. And it's just interesting to find out, because when I first got the Grand Masonic word, I had no idea what it meant. I had you ask people, and really they don't know what it means, and so you're just trying to figure out and go through this. And so Albert Pike gives his thoughts on it. You know, what is the origin of the substitute word? Why is there a substitute word? How can the word be lost? Why would we create a word that has to be given in the presence of 3 people, and only in the presence of 3 people, when, especially during the time of our ritual, it would have been very hard for Hiram, King of Tyre, to come together with King Solomon and Hiram, the worker, to get together and make a new master, or to give the master's word. So why would we have a word that can be lost? And then in this particular section, he really goes deep into the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, and what are the thoughts behind that, and how they relate to the substitute for the master's word. And then really there's some talk about Pike versus Mackey. Mackey believed that it meant something completely different. To let you know, Albert Mackey believed that the master's word could be spelled out into it actually a literal translation. I think it was behold the builder, or something similar to that. Where Albert Pike didn't believe that was the case. He thought it was more of a combination of other items. For instance, the best way for me to do this is IOU. For instance, me telling you that IOU, you understand what that is. And so if I were to say IO, the letters together, it would mean a word that if you were just to look at IOU together as a word, you wouldn't know what it means. However, if you recognize that it's the three letters are I, and then O is not really O, but OWE, and U, YOU, you can see how those come together, and they make a different word based on that meaning. And so that was what Albert Pike was arguing, is that the combination of the three fragments together made a unique word, and he presented his case on what that word was. The next section is the 47th problem of Euclid. For instance, Pike said here, you know, we're told in our ritual that when our brother Pythagoras found this out, that he shouted, "Eureka, I have found it." But we know that not to be true. He wasn't the original shouter of Eureka for said reasons. But introduced here are the importance of the numbers 3, 4, and 5. The number 7 especially, he gets really into the number 7, especially as the number 7 relates to items from the Bible. He brings in 3s, 4s, and talks about these. And this particular section has the most amount of pictures, and I just brought in 3 different ones here for you to look at. The middle one is Pythagoras himself, just a quick picture. And then on the left here, let me see if I got this one. Excuse me. So on the left here is a representation of, you know, as above, so below. You can see the 2 triangles there, where if they were to be interconnected, it would be the Seal of Solomon. You can see these 7, these are the representatives of the 7 celestial bodies of the ancient world, the sun being on the left, the moon on the right, and then the other planets inside of all of those. And this upper portion here represents Hermes, and it's the divine word. And notice how we are going away from, and we're getting closer to God as we move up into the world, and we leave our less base person and our earthly possessions and move more spiritual. And again, here's another symbol that Pike goes through and explains, talking about the 7 different constellations and items like that. He also brings in Hermetic influences inside this chapter, as well as Kabbalistic influences. He really becomes pretty heavy inside of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life in particular, with the number 7. The next section, so those are the 5 main sections, and those take up, each one is about 20 pages for each section as you go through the books. And then he comes to a section which is just, I don't think he was able to find as much information. And so what he did is he called these ones fragments. They're really quick, short hitters. Most of these are about a page inside of the book, maybe even just a couple of paragraphs. He goes on to talk about the truth. Is the cable toe a symbol? Cornerstones, the ladder of Jacob, Tubal-Cain, Shibboleth, Solomon and Hiram, and what they represent. And so on some of these ones, for instance, the cable toe, Albert Pike thought this was, especially going through the degrees, he said that he thought this was a very rude and really not a great symbol. He's like, why would this rope be thrown around my throat and being on penalty of being ripped out if I weren't to agree to the items for which I had nothing to know about going in there. And so he has a short little note inside here, and just real quick, because I wanted to read this one, was it said that cable toe is not a word met in the English language outside of Masonry. It's not treated or spoken of as a symbol of Masonry, and to use, which is in this case of its need was, as I was told, intended to be divested even of a semblance of a symbol. In Hebrew, kabel meant a rope, cord, cable attached to an anchor. In Proverbs 23:34, and two or two as a suffix meant his. In Ezekiel 18:12 through 16 and 23:15, and in Job 22:6, the same word, kabel, means binding or a pledge, or a bind as with a pledge. In Ezekiel 18:7, the word kabel two, meaning his pledge. So the length of one's cable toe means therefore the scope and intent and its spirit of one's pledge. And this is hinted at when he is at the altar and the candidate is revealed to have the halter around his neck, and the master saying, he is now bound to us by a stronger obligation. So these are the kind of things that he goes through here, and I mean, there are really quick, some of these are really quick, but they really have thoughtful meaning inside of these. Like I said, the favorite one for me was the cable toe. However, the representations of Solomon and Hiram was also a very interesting one going through these. So as you pick up these books, the fragment section is actually a really easy read. And if you're looking for some Masonic education, especially for the Master Mason, these are kind of quick hitters that you don't have to spend an hour explaining the whole thing. You can quickly break out a 2 or 3 minute little educational thing on the cable toe or the cornerstones. So why is there a rough ashlar? Why is there a perfect ashlar? Is there really such thing as a perfect ashlar? You know, or is it just a state of a state that we're trying to attain to? So then after that pretty much ends Esoterica. There's not there. Like I said, it's a very short portion to the actual overall book, and then it has 4 appendices: the parallels to the symbols, a letter touching Masonic symbolism, Pike's dependence on other sources, and the faith of Albert Pike. I think the faith of Albert Pike was added especially because the thought behind it is that he may not have been Christian, and then may have been more Jewish, especially, or Hermetic, as he was trying to learn these different things. And Albert de Hoyos really presents a very good case that really he was just a man trying to understand his relationship with God, and that he wasn't limiting himself to a particular religion. And so it goes over there. And again, I talked about the 4 valuable exposés, so I'll go through them here. These are just the front pages: Masonry Dissected, Jachin and Boaz. The third picture here on the far right is a picture out of Jachin and Boaz, and it basically shows the setup of a lodge, and you can see, hey, where everybody's seated and where everything's at, and it looks very similar to what our current lodge setup is, although there's a lot less, we have a lot more formality. When basically they were doing this, it was, hand chalk and on the ground, so it wasn't like there was an actual standalone building that they could just keep this stuff in here. So going through these are really, these 4 exposés are really how I was able to get through the early part of Masonry, because we didn't keep exact the greatest records going through that, and we didn't really want to write down anything and write down the ritual. It was all hand to mouth, or mouth to ear, excuse me, up until some of these exposés came out. So, and some of them are really, especially Jachin and Boaz, this is, if you were to read that one, it basically looks like a cipher that's been written out. This was designed to get you into a lodge room if you're not a Mason, and it actually does a pretty good job to where if the brother Tyler doesn't know any better, he would probably think, oh, you just forgot this or that or the other, and would probably let you in. So this was a very interesting look inside of Masonic history there. And so that's practically it for Esoterica. So if you're interested in getting this, obviously you can take the Master Craftsman program. You can go to the ScottishRiteStore.org and go on there and select it. You do not have to be a Scottish Rite Mason. However, if you are interested in the Scottish Rite, we would love to have you come down and visit us at the Tacoma Scottish Rite. Our valley is the valley that basically covers districts 13, 14, and 15 in the South King County and Pierce County areas. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month, 5:30 social hours, 6:30 dinner. We usually have some kind of education going on during the dinner and a 7:30 meeting. We do have a reunion. We have a reunion twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. Reunion is how we deliver our degrees. Our valley was going to slowly put on some of these degrees, but we are going to put on we're going to present the 4th through the 32nd degree in this November on the 6th and 7th. And if you're interested, the cost is $250. That includes the degrees and the Master Craftsman Scottish Rite Ritual Program. So for more information on that, you can contact Tacoma Scottish Rite at gmail.com, or you can call our office and speak to our wonderful secretary, Brother David Aponte, and his number is 253-565-0272. Thank you for allowing me to present on this. I didn't want to give away too much, so I hope that I've at least piqued your interest and that you will rush out and buy this book. I found it very interesting. It is a very easy read. If you've tried to read Morals and Dogma and were not willing to sit there with a dictionary and try to figure out half the words, this book is a lot easier to read. It flows very easily. It is not a long book at all. The actual pages are very centered inside this, so there's a ton of white room as you go through. So don't be, if you've ever tried to read Morals and Dogma, don't be scared off because it's Albert Spike's writing. It just happens to be a lot easier to read. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I think I see David Colbeth has his hand up.
Thank you, Jim. I was just applauding that, just the applauding sign there. But it was what a really wonderful presentation, James. That was great.
And James, I do want to reiterate something you said, that there are pieces in here because the fact the focus is on on the Blue Lodge. That, guess what? There are pieces from here that you can take from Masonic education within you and to place within your own lodges, and it's something that we recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was master during my year, that was the first year that I had started the Scottish Rite. I had taken. I was relatively a new Mason. I think I was a Mason like 2.5 years before being a master, so I didn't really know a lot about the symbolism or really all that much about the ritual. So I focused on history, and the history section of this is actually very interesting just to give to your lodges. The early history of Freemasonry is clouded as you can be, and so that's why I really liked the exposés that are here, because you can really start to give out some of the thoughts behind the early Freemasonry and how it's developed to what it currently is.
Absolutely. So again, if anyone says so, while we'd love you to join Scottish Rite, I'm a member of the same. If you want to kind of dip your toe in the water by taking the esoteric the curriculum, I think you'll find that very interesting. I'm reminded that when I got into the fraternities, more than 20 years ago, I ended up on Bill Miller's mailing list, and Bill gave me the gift of curiosity. And hopefully, what James did here today was, for those of you who haven't done it yet, is to spark your curiosity, so that way you can kind of dig in and find out, what is this thing? Because there are a lot of layers to this thing that we call Freemasonry, and a lot of people a lot of people just kind of miss out on it, but by not digging in. James, I saw the light go up in your corner. So, how many people here have taken the Master Craftsman program besides me, myself, and James? I know John Davenport's taken it. Okay, so if you haven't taken it, by all means, please sign up. Whether you join Scottish Rite or not, we'd love you to join Scottish Rite, like I said, but please take advantage of that program. So, give me an idea what's going on here. We have a whole suite. As you know, we have Zoom meetings every Monday, and next Monday, very worship brother Kurt Gatzow from Bellingham Bay number 44, Deputy to the Grand Master of District 10, will be here because by popular demand, people want to learn about identity theft and protection. And Kurt will be here to share that information next Monday. The following Monday, we'll have worship brother Daniel Yatta. As many of you already have heard that what Daniel's going to do. Daniel, of course, is master of King Hiram Lodge in Provincetown, Rhode Island, and they have a set of officers' jewels that were produced by Paul Revere. Maybe you heard of him. I don't know, but he's going to talk about their regalia, which is really kind of neat. It only shows up once a year, then it gets locked away because they don't even take it out for parades. So he's going to talk about that. He'll even show it off, which is really cool. I'm trying to think now. First Monday in August, we will have Sean Iyer from the George Washington National Masonic Memorial. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to his words. And then on the 10th, because I know many people on this call were looking forward to attending the Lodge Leaders Retreat and hearing the words of Barry Birch. He's, obviously we're not going to have a Lodge Leaders Retreat. Doesn't mean we can't have Barry Birch. Barry Birch will be our speaker on the 10th of August. So we're excited about that. Look at Ryan's going, how do you do this? And then on the 17th, you're going to want to, again, I know it's long-range planning, but on the 17th, illustrious brother Jeremy Yielding, also from the Valley of Tacoma Scottish Rite, is going to come to talk to us about the Morgan affair. So, as you can see, we got reasons to come to these events. So please share them with your lodge brethren. Let your lodge brethren know, hey, look, there's something really cool happening on these Monday Zooms with District 13. They're at 7 o'clock. It's the same ID, zoom.district13.org, right?
District13masons.org.
Yeah, zoom.district13masons.org. It's the same ID. Log right in. You just got to get through our quote-unquote virtual Tyler. And
he's pretty easy.
Yeah, he's kind of easy. He's kind of, but we got some good stuff happening, and hopefully you'll want to be part of that. And we're hoping to kind of close out August with kind of a big hitter. I'm working on that one right now. We'll see. It's a tough one though. But so tell your lodges, tell your brethren, come to these things. We got some good stuff happening.